Welcome to Finding God's Way. I want to talk to you for just a moment about something very controversial, and it's been controversial for a number of years, and that is music and worship. There are many people who claim that music is authorized, it is fine because it's mentioned in the Old Testament. And if somebody says, well, we don't have worship in music and worship service, then they're ostracized immediately. Oh, you're one of those kinds of people, blah, blah, blah. That's not a very Christian attitude to have in the first place, but let alone that, let's talk about the music for just a moment, and let's think. First of all, the majority of people like to claim that the Old Testament says that it's okay to have music. Even though in the New Testament we're not told to have music, it says in the Old Testament that you can. Well, let's go on that premise for just a moment. First of all, it is mentioned in the Psalms primarily. It's talked about in other places like in Chronicles and even mentioned in Amos and different places, but most people claim the Psalms as being their authority to have music in worship. And let's look at John 15 verse 25. In John chapter 15 verse 25 it says, "But this cometh to pass that the word might be fulfilled that is written in their law." Notice, in their law. Let's talk about the Jews. They hated me without a cause. Jesus is the one that says this. He's making reference to Psalms 35 and verse 19. Psalms 35 and verse 19. So Jesus is including the Psalms in the Mosaical law. Now, is the law right? Is the law something that we need to be following? No, it's not. We don't follow the Mosaical law. We don't live under the Mosaical law today. First of all, the scriptures tell us it was given only to the Jews, only to the Israelites at Mount Sinai. And it was to be with them throughout their generations. That's it. So it wasn't given to you, it wasn't given to me. So to claim that law is giving me authority, but that law wasn't given to me nor to you. That makes no sense, does it? Especially when that law itself has now been done away with. Colossians 2:14, Colossians 2:14, Ephesians 2:15, Hebrews 9 and verse 15. It all tell us that the law is done away with, taken out of the way, nailed it to the cross. In Hebrews 9:15 tells us that Jesus is the mediator, our mediator, yours and mine, of the New Testament, not of the Old. Because the old law, the Mosaical law, doesn't apply to you and I. So to claim that as my authority to use music is wrong, because that law doesn't apply to me and to you. And the old law is done away with. So we lived under the new law. So what does the new law tell us? Ephesians 5:19, for instance, tells us to sing and make melody in our hearts. Why is that so hard to understand for people? I don't know. We're to worship God in spirit and truth. He says He wants those who worship Him, worship Him in spirit and in truth. Not hard to understand that. Why is that important? Because we worship God individually. Each single person worships God. If there were a requirement, beloved, in the law, in the New Testament, for us to use musical instruments, you and I and everybody else that worships God would have to play that instrument in our worship to God, because we are all required to follow the requirements of worship when we come together. Or even when I'm at home worshiping God, it doesn't make any difference. When I worship God, I must follow His rules, His guidelines in I worship to Him. He wants me to sing. He wants me to sing, make melody in my heart. Why? Because Paul tells us that we are the temple of God. See, God's always been worshipped in a specific location. In the Old Testament, during Mosaical times, even while they were wandering through the wilderness, they had a tabernacle and God's presence was there. And they would worship Him where He was. They would go to the temple and worship there. And then while we're on the temple, let's look at that argument that people have about the Old Testament again. If you look at that, all those people who were worshiping God in the Old Testament and using musical instruments, they were Levitical priests. And they were using instruments created by David and given to them. Chronicles tells us that. Amos tells us that they were instruments of David. They were given to them, and they were men. If we were to follow Mosaical law and follow it today, we would have to follow it to the letter, which means women would be left out of the worship service. We can't include women. We can't have it just the way we want it. We have to do it God's way. You see, they don't look into the law the way they need to. They just want to claim it as their authority, but they don't look into the consequences of following that law. Under the New Testament, we all can worship God, including women, because we're all the temple of God. We're all the children of God. God dwells in His temple. We worship Him in His temple, which is our body. We worship Him in our heart, the altar of our heart. We offer the spiritual sacrifice. See, we all worship Him spiritually, not mechanically. In Acts chapter 17, verse 25, it says, God is not worshipped with men's hands. That should tell you something right there. How do you play musical instruments? With your hands. How do you make musical instruments? With your hands. And God's not worshipped with men's hands. Because all of our worship is spiritual. All of it is spiritual. It's not hard to understand that. If there are musical instruments required, beloved, everyone would have to play whatever musical instrument that is required. But what did God do? He made it easy. He said sing. And He didn't say sing untuned. He didn't say sing in pitch. He didn't say sing professionally. He just said sing. Make a melody to me because you love me. And what does God say? John 14:15, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. God has commanded you to sing, not play an instrument. Not hard to understand, is it? Thank you for today's lesson. Bye-bye.